Hey everyone, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me for Quilt-Tea. Yes, this is a series where I, Jen Sorensen, talk about some of the quilts that I've made because I really truly believe that it is so important for us to share the story behind our quilts that we make. The inspiration, the techniques, the materials. And I've said this before, I have a quilt from my great-grandmother. Well, my mom has it, but I'm claiming it. I'm claiming that it's going to be mine. It's a great cathedral window quilt. Anyway, I don't know anything about that quilt, and I don't want that to be the case for my quilts over time. As such, I'm here to share with you the story behind my quilts, and today I want to talk about my Through the Looking Glass quilt. This is a quilt that I made back in 2016. Technically started it towards the end of 2015. Because I made this as part of a Kaleidoscope Block of the Month that I did on my blog when I still updated a blog. Now it's all on Instagram at this point. But I posted 2 blocks that were a modified Kaleidoscope block every month for 24 blocks. And at the end of the year, I combined them to make this quilt that you see here. And there's actually a row at the bottom that's kind of off camera, but I'll put in a shot of the full quilt as well at the beginning and end of this video so you can see the full thing. My thought process behind this was a little bit before this, I had made a kaleidoscope style quilt and it was part of a challenge where I had to use the color emerald. It was like a sew down, throw down kind of challenge. And I modified a kaleidoscope block and ended up really enjoying it. During the process of that designing, I made a bunch of blocks and it made me realize the potential that each of them had. So I kept designing a bunch, and before I knew it, I had like 20 blocks. And I said, well, I have to do something with it. I made a few more to come up with 24 blocks total as part of this block of the month. And I had a lot of fun doing that itself. Misty's gonna jump up and hopefully not hit the camera. Come here, sweetie. Let me put the tea down and grab her. Come here. Come here. Hi. You saying hi? Hi? All right, you're going off the table. Okay, so with this quilt, I keep it real here. Come on, you know that by now. In terms of picking the fabric, what I wanted to do was I had this one background fabric that I love. I think it's a Carolyn Friedlander, early Carolyn Friedlander fabric. And I complemented it with 4 colors, 2 values of each, really a dark and a medium value. So I picked 2 teals, which teal is my favorite color. So I've got 2 teals, 2 oranges, 2 kind of lime colors. We've got more of a lemon, more of a lime, and then 2 purples. So you can see the 2 purples. And I wanted to play off the value because some of these, like in this block here, you can see the 2 oranges next to each other, the dark and the light. The purple here, you've got the dark and the light. And you're playing with value between these so that you get some different effects within it. You know, you can see the 2 different oranges here, the 2 different teals, and that's gonna create this depth and feel of motion, motion. You're kind of going from dark to light with this one, and I'll bring you in closer to see what I'm talking about. I really wanted to play with those colors. They're all jewel tones pretty much because a quilting jewel, I love jewel tones. That's me. And that's kind of what I use. I didn't know how I was going to lay out every single block, but I knew I had this set of fabric that I was going to work with. It was always going to have this creamy background that does have a print to it, which is really nice. It has that metallic. And then I was always going to incorporate those 8 fabrics in one way or another. And I had like a yard of each, and I wanted to just play with them. I didn't want to, pre-plan too much. I wanted to kind of see how it evolved. And as I went along in the months to come, as I made the blocks, I would make them and just put them up on a design wall and see what colors I was missing. What was what did I need? And then I ended up laying it down after I had all of the blocks and playing with arrangement to make sure I had balanced value. As you can see here, this lime green probably stands out to you in the background. Well, I didn't want to put it, there's some more lime green down here on the bottom that you can see. I wanted to spread that out in terms of value. You know, the oranges over here are light, and then you've got some more down here, and just playing off of the color. You've got a lot of the lighter purple up here and down there, and really just playing with the balance overall. The thing with these kinds of quilts for me that's really tricky is finding that balance, because you can keep moving and it's knowing when to stop. So at one point I just said, yep, done, I'm piecing it together. And I probably could continue to move things around, but I'm like, no, why? Just enjoy it. So I did. This entire quilt is paper pieced, which I love paper piecing, and they're all blocks that I designed. The really cool thing is that it's not like a square within these blocks. So I will outline it for you here. This is your block. So you can kind of see the way that it comes together is this is half of it here. There's a cat hair. No, can't get that out. So this is half of it, because when you put this block with this block, you then have a straight line to sew across. And it's easier to piece than it really looks, because the only points that you're matching are these centers when you make the actual block. So the center here, when you piece that, and then when you have to piece the blocks together, these points. And I kind of like that about this particular block, because when you're sewing the blocks together, you're always going to sew this like solid triangle to the other kaleidoscope piece. And that's what I love about this one, because it can be a really easy paper piecing block, and I enjoyed it. But to me, this was really also an exercise in looking at some of these blocks to say, well, how could they work on their own? And I think I think I may need to do this block repeated on its own to see the movement that that might make. And props. I like bringing props. This block I thought was really interesting because of the pinwheel that you have, and then these shapes with the lighter purple. And I thought, well, what if I made a quilt using that repeated? And what would the movement be? And I kind of kept that in mind with this quilt is, you know, each one of these blocks could stand alone and just be its own quilt. And I have a second one that I'll talk about eventually on here that I did with just one of the blocks down at the bottom here. So why don't I pull you in, show you a close-up, and then we'll take a look at the back as well to kind of finish talking about this quilt, because we haven't even talked about the quilting at all or the back. First, I figured we would do kind of a mid-range shot where I can show you each row individually. And now you can start to see the really simple, easy quilting that I did on this quilt, because I found it to be so extremely busy that any quilting I did was going to get lost. And there's that bottom row that you couldn't see during that full shot, just because this is a tall quilt and I'm not a tall person. So if we go up close here, you can really see the construction of this quilt and how fun it is with some of these different designs. You can see the detail. When you look far back, you can't really tell how complex this can be. And I think that's what I love about it, is that there's so many different things you can do. Depending on how you piece this and what you do, there are a lot of different designs you may see in here. So I don't know if you can see, let's see if I can point it out. You almost have like this circle. You might have another star here. You know, there's so many different designs that you could figure out. If we look at this, there's different, kind of like a storm at sea. You can kind of see this other star that could emerge. There are other circles and everything. There's just so much potential to this quilt based on your color choice and the way that you lay things out and play around with the fabric itself. And I think that's also what's really exciting is you never know what might happen. So in terms of fabrics, we know we've got a bunch of Carolyn Friedlander. A lot of this was from my stash. I know that these are the domino dots here. I've got a couple of those, and I believe those are Violet Craft. I've got, I know that purple is a cotton and steel, and it's just really fun. And I believe this purple might be a cotton and steel too. I'm not positive. I'm almost positive, actually. Almost positive it is. Let's take a look at the back here, just so you can see what I did. Once again, you can tell that I like solid backs because the front had a lot of light on it with this fabric. I wanted it to match on the back, and yes, there is a label in the back corner over there. You can kind of see it. I'm not going to show it to you though because it has personal information. But because the front has so much white in it, I didn't want, you can see here, you can kind of see through it. If I had a dark back, it was going to make the front darker, and I didn't want that. And I just quilted it with these straight lines about 1/2 inch across because the quilt was so busy you weren't going to see the quilting. Yes, I could have enhanced the quilt a little bit by focusing on all of the designs, but I didn't want to change thread so often, and I wanted to really focus on the design, not the quilting. I would be really curious to know if you have a favorite block out of this. Let me know in the comments down below if there's one that stands out. You can do like what column, what row, if you want to do that, or if you know the blocks themselves, if any of them really stands out to you that you could see repeated easily, or that would be really fun to make, modify, do its own quilt, whatever. In terms of other materials, this is going to be a Quilter's Dream batting. I believe this is a cotton, I'm feeling it. Yeah, this is a Quilter's Dream Select Cotton. The thread that I used to piece it is an Aurifil 50 weight. And then because I quilted this easily on my long arm, just to kind of keep it pretty easy instead of manhandling this under the throat of my domestic, this is a number 50 So Fine from Superior Threads. The binding, I did traditional binding to match this background color. I decided not to face it because, in this case, I didn't think it was going to make a difference, and I thought the traditional binding would look really nice. I always hand sew my bindings to the back, so I machine sew it to the front, turn it over, and hand sew it to the back. And that's pretty much it around this quilt itself. It's been fun to kind of see the possibilities that one block can have, and it's gotten my mind kind of processing. It helps me to see, okay, in terms of design, what can I do that maybe the one tweak shifts something a little bit, and it's helped my design process as I continue to evolve my style. This is not really my style much anymore, but it was an exercise in how do I evolve a block? How do I keep changing something to maybe get a different look and feel? And I think that's really what I got out of this quilt itself, is the process. And I ended up with a really fun quilt that I'm really excited about. I love it. People seem to really enjoy this one. There's a pattern for it. You can buy each month still individually or the entire series as well, all 24 blocks, but I never want to use these to push those, just if you're interested in that. And I hope this encouraged you to create something beautiful, like I always say at the end of my videos, because I really do want to inspire you. And maybe I'm inspiring you to look at things in a different way. The same block that maybe you return to, look at that in a slightly different light, or just try something different. But guys, thank you so much for coming along on this journey as I tell the story about this particular quilt through the looking glass. I will see you guys real soon. Until then, have a fantastic day.